August 12th marks the one-year anniversary of the Charlottesville rally. For many like me, the white supremacy on full display at the Charlottesville rally was shocking. But those events only brought forward into plain light what so many people of color experience on a daily basis. Racism and white supremacy, whether conscious or unconscious, is the sea we swim in and is deeply connected to the police violence which takes so many Black and brown lives unjustly. I'm honored to share a time-sensitive call to action. In California, at the time of the release of this episode, lawmakers are about to deliberate on two key police accountability bills, SB 1421 and AB 931. In advance of that deliberation, I'm working with Nikki Yaboa, the producer of a powerful play called Mothers, to bring forward the stories of those who've lost loved ones to police brutality to the lawmakers who will vote on this bill. We need your help to raise funds, to spread the word, and to call California lawmakers, urging them to attend and to vote yes on these bills. Visit GoFundMe.com/TakeThisPlayToSenate to learn more about this effort and how you can support. Now here's the show. Hi, and welcome to Mother's Quest, a podcast for moms like me ready to live our own truly epic life. I'm Julie Neal, a life and leadership coach, community builder, writer, and mom to two high-energy boys who challenge me to grow into my best self. I'll be right there. Where was I? In the months leading up to a big milestone birthday, I decided it was time to stop sidelining my dreams and realize that I'm the hero of my own journey. I knew I didn't want to do it alone, so I created this podcast to learn from other moms on their own quest, so their words of wisdom and lessons learned could help light the way for mine. I created this podcast for myself. Come along with me, and you'll find some treasures of your own. Hi, this is Julie, and if the sound of my recording is a bit different than usual, it's because I'm not in my usual recording location. I'm sitting on the balcony at my hotel in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, where Chris and I are spending the week while my children are on a special trip with their grandparents. We're celebrating our 21st anniversary and so far enjoying every moment of it. To make space for vacation and my children's transition to kindergarten and high school this month, I decided to re-release 2 episodes and take a break from recording. Next week, at the 1-year mark of the Charlottesville rally, I'll share again my original conversation with Resistance Live's Elizabeth Cronice McLaughlin, along with what I've learned since answering the call to fight against police brutality. Please stay tuned for that episode and see the link in the show notes for how you can help in this cause right now. When I thought about the first episode from past seasons I'd like to share again, the very first introductory episode, 00, titled Planting the Seeds for Mother's Quest, came immediately to mind. It seemed right to revisit this episode because the last few months have been a time of reflecting on all the growth that has happened in my own personal development with my children and in the development of Mother's Quest since that first recording. In the last few months, I spoke about my journey on a panel at a conference for the first time. The podcast hit a big milestone, reaching over 20,000 downloads with over 45 episodes in 30 countries on 7 podcast channels. Our Facebook group passed 500 members, and I stepped into new territory advocating for police accountability bills in the state of California. I completed the first virtual Mother's Quest Circle pilot and the first Spark Your Epic Life one-on-one coaching program, and launched a new blog series called Tales of Our Humanity. My children have experienced tremendous growth too, one graduating from preschool and the other middle school, and each taking on new adventures that have stretched them in different ways. Seeds I planted when I recorded this episode have taken root in amazing ways. And at the same time, the original intention to use my voice, to create space for powerful conversation, to build community, and to grow in a reciprocal relationship with my children have stayed constant. I'm appreciating the power of marking a new beginning, enjoying the journey, staying true to a vision, and allowing the original seeds of intent to flourish. I hope in listening to this episode again, or perhaps discovering it for the first time, you'll feel grounded in the original messages of Mother's Quest and also inspired by what has been possible since then, so that you can plant some new seeds of your own, trusting that they too will grow. I'm Julie Neal, and this is Mother's Quest.
Hello, and welcome to the first introductory episode of the Mother's Quest podcast. The fact that you're listening to this now means the podcast is officially live, and I've reached my 45th birthday on December 1st, a milestone that in many ways brought me to this moment. In the months before my birthday, something inside me definitely changed. I know the seeds of this have been planted, probably throughout my whole life, but this window of opportunity feels unique. For the first time, I have a desire to create and share publicly something deeply personal, to use and share my voice, to commit to living what I now call my epic life, and to build a community around me to support me on that journey. In the process, I hope to provide inspiration, coaching, and connection to help other mothers like you do the same. The solo cast is different from the other upcoming episodes where I interview other mothers to learn their words of wisdom. Today is an opportunity for me to get more comfortable using my own voice, to share about myself, what inspired me to create Mother's Quest and this podcast, and share some lessons I've learned along the way. I also want to give you a picture of what to expect on upcoming episodes, share the inspiration for the Mother's Quest mantra that will close every episode, and invite you to complete an assignment, should you choose to accept it. In getting ready to have this conversation with you, I realized that the start of this actually all happened a year ago on my birthday. On a whim, I did something totally out of character. I bought myself a ticket to a creativity workshop led by author Elizabeth Gilbert. It was around the time she launched her book, Big Magic: Creative Living Beyond Fear. So that morning, I drove myself to Napa. I sat down at this round table next to total strangers where I received a personal journal that said, "You are a brilliant writer." And I spent the day following Elizabeth's instructions to write letters to myself, calling out different parts of who I am as a creative person. I wrote to myself from a part of me that represented courage, enchantment, permission, persistence, trust, and divinity. I'm certain that those letters I wrote last year were some of the seeds I planted that brought me to this moment. That day, I connected to my creative self, honored my fear, and told it that I would draw a line and give it firm boundaries. And I gave myself permission to dream big. Something Elizabeth said that day has stayed with me. She said, "Dream the perfect thing, but then go make the real thing." So before I continue, I want to commit to myself and to you to make the real thing with this recording. As I tell you the stories ahead, I know it won't come out exactly as I want. I know I'm going to lose track of my thoughts here and there, and you may hear the rustling of paper as I find the pieces I want to share with you. And I know the sound quality is not going to be perfect, but it will be real, honest, from my heart, and the words I authentically want to share with myself and with you to document this milestone. So here goes. So the first thing I wanted to share with you actually comes from a theory of change that I put together to capture all that I'm hoping to accomplish and do and all the important pieces of this for-purpose venture I'm starting called Mother's Quest, of which the podcast is one part. And I want to start by reading the mission statement. Mother's Quest provides inspiration, coaching, and community to light the way and sustain a mother on her journey to becoming her best self and living her own epic life. In so doing, through the power of her example, she also inspires her children to do the same. That is really what I'm on a mission to do for myself, and I want to invite you to come along with me. I really decided that I didn't want to do this alone, and I'm building Mother's Quest as a community to help me in my own quest, but also to be a place where I can bring my own gifts to help other women do the same. For a while, I was struggling with how to capture what this thing is that I'm talking about. What am I on a quest for? And I was having a lot of conversations with people where I was getting frustrated because they were trying to help me get clear. And they kept saying, well, I think you're trying to help mothers live a balanced life, or I think you're trying to help them not be so overwhelmed. And I kept saying, no, that isn't it. It's much more than that. It's beyond that. It's not just that I want them to be more balanced. I want them to create a life that is filled with the things that matter most. That's the life I want to create. I want it to be epic, like the kind of story I would want to read in a book where the character really went after the things that mattered. And this idea of epic captures being the hero of your own journey. But I also wanted it to encapsulate the things that I think matter most as you're going on that journey. The things that are guideposts for living an epic life, especially when you're raising your children. So after months of frustration, one night at midnight, I'm a night owl, I sat down at the table and I said, I really think it is this idea of an epic life. But how can I get epic to explain the things that matter? And I decided to try it. I pulled out a napkin and a pen and I wrote E, the first letter in epic. And the first thing I always think about for how I want to live my life most fully is that I want to be engaged mindfully with my children and my family. And so there was it, E, engaged mindfully. And the next thing I always talk about is the fact that even though I'm first and foremost focused on my children, I also know I want to make a difference beyond my family. And so P, passionate and purposeful, making a difference beyond my family, flowed out next. And the thing that I talk about after that is that I want to invest in myself, that I want to continue to create space for me to learn and to grow. And the I in epic represented that, invested in myself. And the last thing is I'm really clear that I don't want to do it alone, that community is built by being known and knowing others. And so the C represented connected to a strong support network, so I'm in community on my journey. So the months of frustration culminated in this clarity. And this epic framework has really become a grounding thing for me as I've created Mother's Quest. It's the thing I use in the Mother's Quest episodes to have other mothers talk about how they're living their life. And I've been using it as a planning tool to set my intentions for the week. So that is on the theory of change. And by the way, I will include a link to this theory of change in the show notes so that you can follow along if you'd like. At the bottom of the theory of change are a set of principles that I really feel are the foundation for everything that I'm creating. And I wanted to share these principles and also some stories of how these principles have been coming to life for me as I've been creating Mother's Quest. So the first principle is we each have the wisdom and power within to become the hero of our own journey and the author of our own story. I really do believe we have it inside. But what's necessary is to pay attention, to be awake, to stop and reflect in the moments of your life when your intuition is telling you something. And I want to share the story of actually how I decided I was crossing the threshold into this epic life and I was going to create Mother's Quest. It happened on April 15th, actually. I posted on Facebook a story about what had taken place and the reflection I was having about it. And I wanted to read you from that post. So here's an excerpt from the post I wrote on April 15th. Facebook reminded me this morning that it was a year ago today since I first invited people to participate in a pilot Mother's Quest workshop. I saw the memory on my feed and admit I felt trapped, frustrated that I haven't taken more action to fulfill this dream. And then literally moments later, this happened. My 3-year-old son, Jake, and I realized that a bird had flown into our house. The poor bird was frantically flying into windows, moving toward the light, but crashing into the glass barrier every time. At first, we were scared by the thudding of the bird and ran upstairs. But after a few breaths, I realized I just needed to go down and open our back door so it could find its way. I opened the door, and it was less than a minute before the bird flew out. I stood at the door and thought fleetingly that perhaps this was a message from the universe. The bird was a fitting metaphor for where I am in my quest to create the Mother's Quest enterprise right now. I try moving toward a bright vision, but I feel like I keep crashing against barriers and may need someone to open a door for me. I watched the bird that escaped as it walked around my back porch. For some reason, it wasn't flying away. I wondered whether it had injured a wing. Then I heard flapping again, and I realized there was a second bird trapped inside. It was as if the other bird was waiting for the one inside before it would take flight. I opened the door again, and the second bird hopped right out. I decided the universe didn't believe I got the message the first time, and so sent it again to drive the point. I figured I better sit down, write the story, and share it. Only as I began typing the story did I realize there was another message that the second bird was delivering. No one else is going to open a door for me until I open the door myself. So that experience on April 15th really became the beginning of everything that followed. I've been all in on living my life in a much more present way and in following this passion to bring Mother's Quest to myself and to the world. I think of that day as a spark moment. I think that we all have these moments if we actually stop and pay attention to them. And if you look at the Mother's Quest logo, you'll see that there's a spark in it, and actually that spark turns into the two birds. That second bird really was this reminder to me that I have the wisdom inside and that I have to step up and be the hero of my journey. Nobody else can do it for me. I can reach out for help. I can build a community to support me, but the first step happens with myself. So that is the first principle and the first story that I wanted to share with you. The second principle is that our children inspire and challenge us to grow into our best selves, and we challenge and inspire our children to grow into their best selves through our example. I believe so strongly in that there's this amazing reciprocal relationship that happens. And I've had the experience as I've been creating Mother's Quest of seeing what a difference it makes in my kids when I share with them my own struggles and journey along the way and how much wisdom they've had to bring back to me. I wanted to share one particular story that really jumps out for me that I want to remember. One day I was getting ready to go meet with somebody who I was inviting to be a partner, to be part of creating Mother's Quest with me. And I was a little nervous about it. And I was driving Jake, who's 4, to preschool. And as I was driving, I said to him out loud, "Jake, I feel like I have a date with destiny today. I have this important meeting and I'm a little bit nervous." And I remembered the author Wayne Dyer, who passed away this year, and how he said that kids are so insightful and connected to something, an intuition that's bigger than adults are typically connected with. And so I thought about Wayne Dyer, and I just put this question out there. He encourages you to ask your children these questions. So I said, "Jake, do you have any words of wisdom for me before I go to this meeting?" And I honestly did not know what I was going to hear back, but I wasn't expecting to hear what came next. Without any hesitation, Jake said, "Mom, I love you, and you can do anything you set your mind to." I immediately welled up with tears, and I was so struck by it. They were really the words I needed to hear. And I said to Jake, "What made you say that? How did you know to say that to me?" And what he said back was even more profound than the first thing he shared. He said, "Mom, you say those words to me all the time." And I remember that when I do a morning practice on my deck, I sometimes go outside and do yoga and have a couple minutes of meditation. And often Jake will actually come and crash it. And we'll end up doing it together. And one of the yoga positions is the warrior pose. And when we're in the warrior pose, I ask him to repeat back after me. I say, "I am strong." And he says, "I'm strong." And then I say, "I can do anything I set my mind to." And he repeats it back. I didn't remember or realize that in sharing that experience with him, I was planting seeds in him. And those were the same seeds he offered back to me that day. And I just want to remember this as such a powerful example of what can happen when we share ourselves and our own experiences with our children. And then when we also reach out to them with curiosity to learn from them and what they have to give us. That's the second principle. The third one is that our personal development and journeys are ongoing and dynamic and don't happen in a straight line. And part of what I mean by that is that sometimes you feel like you're going backwards. So in the month before the solo cast and actually launching the podcast, I hadn't been feeling very inspired. Jake actually got pneumonia, which was really scary, and he was sick for most of the month. He got better, and then he had a relapse. And there were days where we were not sleeping. And just as he started to get better, the election happened, and the election results really knocked me off of my foundation. And I was having trouble doing the work to get the podcast launched. And I was actually really dreading the solo cast. I just didn't feel connected to this whole thing and my epic life. And this principle has been really helpful to remind me that the journey doesn't always feel great, and to honor the times that feel more challenging, and to realize that there's growth and learning on the other side, and that it's part of the process. I had actually a really healing experience last week. I was just so distraught, and I could tell that I wasn't moving forward past it. And I decided to reach out to Navjeet Kandola, who's actually the person I interviewed for the first episode of the podcast. I hope you'll listen in. And Navjeet really led me through a process that was very healing. And afterwards, I felt like I could breathe for the first time in really weeks. And I went ahead and wrote a post about that experience. And I wanted to read the last paragraph of that post with you. And I'll include a link in the show notes to the post as well. But it really helped set an intention for me of how I want to bring this Mother's Quest podcast to you. Here goes. So come December 1st, the Mother's Quest podcast will be birthed. Not as I originally envisioned it, with me feeling 100% inspired, with a launch party or a website, with the first president who's also a mother headed to the White House. But I will release it to the world with honesty, with reverence for the darkness and the light, and with the hope that at least one mother out there may need the messages within to move forward herself. The last principle on the theory of change that I wanted to share with you today is that it is the journey and not the destination that matters most. And that lesson has been coming to me over and over again. After I dreamt of the way I want to live my life and the creation of this venture, Mother's Quest, I found myself also getting impatient along the way, that I didn't already have it all figured out, that I wasn't already stepping into this new version of myself fully, that things were taking so much longer than I thought they would. And I had signed up for this amazing experience with Jonathan Fields, who has his own podcast called The Good Life Project, which is a favorite of mine and has also been an inspiration behind the creation of the Mother's Quest podcast. He was leading me through a process of creating a manifesto for Mother's Quest, which I'm still working on and will definitely share with you. But we had this opportunity to call in and get feedback. And while I was on the phone talking to Jonathan Fields, this person who I so admired and have been listening to really for years on his podcast, I said out loud, I'm just so frustrated. I already want to be there. I just wish I could get through all of this and figure it all out. And then immediately after I voiced that, I said to him, wow, actually, I just realized something. I'm already living a more epic life. I am having this conversation with you, Jonathan Fields, getting feedback from you on my manifesto, and talking to you about my struggle. This would never have been happening for me a year ago. And I've had so many other experiences like that since I decided to take that step the day that those birds were trapped in my home and I decided I was moving forward and would never be in that same place again. I've had so many rich experiences that wouldn't have happened had I not started on this process. And it's actually been the creative process itself, even getting to this moment, that has made me feel fulfilled along the way. If I stop and notice, and if I let go of this destination in the future as the thing that I'm holding most dear, and really just relish the process. So that is the last of the principles I wanted to share with you. And those principles are going to be coming up again and again in the future episodes as I talk with other mothers. I wanted to give you just a little bit of a picture of what my intent is for those conversations. I really want to bring together a diverse group of mothers who are all living their epic lives in different ways, who are all making a difference in the world in different ways, and give them a chance to share their story and all their lessons learned. And I want to gather those words of wisdom. It really is for myself to support me in my own journey, but I really hope that you'll come along and listen too. I believe that there will be so many important treasures and things that you'll be able to take from those conversations. And I've already recorded the first 3, and I've learned so much from each of those women. Navjeet Kandola, who I mentioned before, is a spiritual advisor, and that is a much more deep dive in spirituality, actually, than some of the other episodes. But she really talks about how, for her, living an epic life is being fully present with her son and paying attention to the magic that is in the world around her and creating more of those moments. And there have been many times where I have had to remind myself about that and thought of Navjeet's words of just being present and appreciating all the things that are already there and having a more abundant mindset instead of focusing on the things that are not. The second interview is with a woman named Catherine Winch, and we talk about unmasking motherhood, about how sometimes we only share the highlight reels and don't talk about the things that are hard, which are part of the process. And Catherine talks about her own journey to living a life that was not about pleasing others, but about the things that really fulfilled her. And the third conversation I've already recorded is with a friend of mine, actually, and a former colleague, Michelle Ratcliffe. And she is committed to nourishing her family through healthy food and connection to gardening and gathering around the table. And she's bringing that to other families through her venture, which is called Rootopia. And Michelle talks about how she grounds herself and her kids and her family, and also about how she took a leap of faith and how sometimes we just need to take those first next steps, even when we don't know where it's taking us. They're all intimate and amazing conversations, and I really hope that you'll tune in and be a part of them. Something shifted between the time of those first 3 conversations and what's happening now, and it was that the election took place, and it does feel like the world is a different place in many ways. I have a commitment to continue these same kinds of conversations with mothers, but I also really want to engage mothers in thinking about how we're living our lives and supporting our children in the midst of what's happening now. And I'm really interested in reaching out to mothers that are working on some of the issues that I feel like are at risk right now with the direction that President-elect Trump may be taking us. So I look forward to having some really deep and meaningful and sometimes hard conversations to guide me as a mom with my own children during this time. I don't know yet exactly where the podcast will take me. I'm excited to have those conversations with mothers. I commit in all those intros to sharing some of my own personal thoughts and takeaways. And I may record some more of these solo casts to share more of my personal story along the way. And I'm also committed to doing a 12-episode season and then pausing and seeing what that felt like and what the impact was and whether I want to continue to move forward. And I want to dedicate this season to my friend Leslie, who tragically passed away from pancreatic cancer this summer. Leslie was an amazing mom to 2 kids. She was also living her epic life, and in many ways, she stepped into living that life even more fully when she got the cancer diagnosis. The day after she passed away, I wrote a post, and I wanted to share some of the parts of that because the last words of it have really become a mantra for me, and I've decided they're going to be the words that close the end of every episode. The doctors said about Leslie that she defied everything they thought they knew as she continued to work at the City of Pasadena's art division in between going to chemo, walked at pancreatic fundraisers, and showed up fully for her 2 children, speaking and glowing beautifully at her daughter's bat mitzvah within the last year. Here's what I know, even more fully with the example she set. Life is precious. Nothing matters more than the people we love, the work that lights us up, and being of service to others. There's no time for bullshit, especially the bullshit we fabricate ourselves out of our own self-limiting beliefs. Seize the day. Honor your gifts. Love your people. I was typing that through tears, and I really want to remember those words. Before I close, I want to read to you a letter that I wrote to myself that day that I was at that creativity workshop. It was a letter in which I gave myself permission to dream. And I'm saying these words out loud to myself as a reminder. They're also an offering for you. And I want to invite you to take a challenge to find some quiet time for yourself with a pen and paper and actually write your own letter to yourself, giving yourself permission for whatever it is you need to live your epic life. And I hope that you'll go to mothersquest.com and join the community, be part of the Facebook group, and consider sharing some of what came up for you if you spend the time writing this letter to yourself. So here it is. Dear Julie, I am your principal. I am the chief architect. I am designing your life. I already have the blueprints. You should know you are living and will live a blessed and rich and memorable and meaningful life. Your design is one of connection and love, of challenge and perseverance, of stepping into your authenticity and your gifts. You will not settle for anything less than absolutely everything that matters most to you. Stay awake. You have the right and the obligation to live your life to its fullest. Thank you for listening. I hope you'll join me and continue to be part of the Mother's Quest podcast and community. And I hope you will give yourself permission to live your own epic life. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming along with me on this episode of the Mother's Quest podcast. I hope this conversation sparked something that will help you live your epic life. If you'd like to get show notes and learn more about the Mother's Quest community, head over to mothersquest.com. And while you're there, I would love it if you would follow the prompts to subscribe, leave a review, and help us spread the word. I want to end with some words to help light the way on your quest. Seize the day. Love your people. Honor your gifts. Until next time.